The scientifically worst combination of notes that you can play on any instrument. The second worst. You're not ready for the first worst. You're not ready. Today we'll be talking about the tritone, which by itself sounds like this. Today we want to explore the why. Like, why would you even want to touch that if it sounds like that by itself? But context is everything, and the tritone is actually a really musical interval. So we'll look today at some different musical examples we can use, and we'll have a good time. So while the concept of a tritone sounds kind of complicated and sounds like something that, musically isn't even that appealing, it's got a lot of really practical uses, and we'll explore a lot of that today. To define the tritone, it is essentially just a distance between two notes. And when we're thinking about tritone, we're thinking about three whole tones, or three whole steps. And a whole step on guitar is just 2 frets. So if we're looking at this low E string, if I'm trying to find the tritone of that, it would be 3 whole steps away on the 6th fret. So 0 to 6 is a tritone. If you play a tritone together harmonically instead of in a series, melodically, so that's in a series, if I play them at the same time, that is essentially just taking a power chord, which is this 2 fret distance, and collapsing that note down a fret. And this movable shape is what we're going to be talking about today. It always looks like that most of the time. So the tritone is 6 frets above your root note, but the root note repeats itself on fret number 12, right? If we're thinking about just E. So the tritone is directly in the middle of those 2 E's. Therefore, it's as far away from E as you can possibly get. If I move any closer this way, I get closer to 0 E. If I move any further this way, I get closer to 12 E. And so that's part of why the dissonance is so stark.
It's also as far away from a note you can get on the circle of fifths, just for the theory buffs out there. The major scale contains 1 tritone. Between the 4th and 7th notes, it's the tension part of the major scale. If we take out the tritone, we have the pentatonic scale, and that's why we use it so much and just use those other notes more sparingly. Due to its dissonance, the tritone's been called the devil in music, probably because it's hard to sing. But in fact, God created the tritone as part of the overtone series. When you divide a string into harmonics, if you take the dividing the string into fifths and then again in sevenths, you get the tritone sound like that.
The tension that the tritone creates is something that we often will musically try to resolve by moving the tritone to something a little bit more pleasing. But if we just hang on that tension instead, it can be used for a lot of really cool special effects. And so one of those special effects might be like the old British siren. Maybe as the siren passes by, get a little bit of that Doppler effect.
Yeah.
It fades slowly into the distance.
Or you've got the scary movie effect by moving every 3 frets.
You even gave that a little bit of resolve. I felt better when that started going down. So. Or you could play the tritone every other fret, kind of creating a dreamy stair climbing effect. I played the last one totally wrong.
For a sci-fi movie, you might have some things like this. If we resolve the tritone, there are 2 main resolutions. They're both contrary motion. If you take the tritone, you can resolve the high note up a fret and the bottom note down a fret, or you can go the other way and resolve inwardly. That's the common resolution that you'll hear a lot in classical music. We use it a lot in cadences, something like this. I've never created an exercise especially for the tritone, so I decided to do a specific one for this video. And the one I have called the Ultimate Tritone Exercise is a finger pattern. It's just simple 8-note pattern. The fingers are 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. And I'm doing a tritone ascending, descending, then ascending again, and then back descending. On the right hand, I might go P, A, M, I. can be done anywhere on the guitar. If you do it with a pick, I would go down, up. You can do it backwards. And if you decide you want to move along the neck, I would go in increments of 2 frets, like the key, though, is to practice it slowly and very evenly. And like many exercises, I'm not leaving any fingers down. Sometimes when I do chromatic exercises, I leave fingers down as I add things, but this is all separate. Blues is based a lot on the dominant 7th chord, say an A7 chord, and at the heart of that chord you've got this tritone shape right here. And then if we go to a D7 chord, there's another tritone shape, and the E7 is right next to it. So this is a great exercise for beginners. Number 14, you can play through a 12-bar blues by just simply playing this tritone shape for A, and then for D move down a fret, and then E is up a fret higher than A. You can play through the whole song just like that, kind of what we call comping, playing just the essential notes. And later I'll show you how to do it using lead and then rhythm alternating. So let's play the exercise. You can do the tritones. 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the exercise is written the way I played it for the first 2 measures, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But feel free to jazz that up a little bit, play it with whatever rhythms you find musical.
So that's the 12-bar blues, and to find that tritone for any chord, you can just find the name of the chord. If you want an A, and move down 2 frets, and you can use that tritone shape on either side of that note. It'll work the same way on either side. And because of the inversion factor of the tritone, there are actually 10 places per octave that you can play that shape and do the 1, 4, 5, the A, D, and E like we were doing with Jared there. This style of comping can be used by yourself as well if you wanted to play a call and response thing where you play a lead line and then answer it with the tritone, kind of rhythm idea. And so here's an exercise called the Tritone Blues, where I play a little lead line and then answer it with the tritone.
If you go to the next page, you'll see exercise 17, which is titled Tritone Rock. This is a more rock-styled piece that also uses call and response, where your call is a sort of rock rhythm riff, kind of low down, and then your response are some little tritone chord stabs. So this is what this song sounds like. Messed up the last chord now. Okay, I'm not going to start over.
You slid to
It's
it
funny,
at
though.
the end.
Yeah.
So
I'll just leave it in. It's fine.
we've been talking about blues where the tritone forms the 3rd and the flat 7 of the chord. You can also start on the root and use a tritone from there, and that's the flat 5. That's called the blue note. And you can do licks based on that, following down throughout the blues scale, something like this, or in playing lead, sometimes we use the tritone to segue from one spot of the neck to the next. So if you're playing here and then you want to move up to the D chord from A, you can do a sliding lick like that, or moving that way using slurs. Both of those move from A to D. Here's exercise 19 with some rhythm. 2, 3, 4. Tritones are also used in blues intros, turnarounds, or endings, something like this. Or the inversion 6 frets higher. For a more advanced idea, the tritone can be used for many different chord tone pairs over different chords. So say for an E7, if I use this tritone, it's the 9 and sharp 5. If I go to D7 and use the exact same tritone, it's the flat 7 and the 3rd. And then if I go to A, it's the flat 3rd and a 6. It sounds like this.
And that's the same two notes every time, just taking on a different form depending on what chord you're playing.
In fact, there are 5 tritones out of 6 possible ones that will sound good over any chord. And you can create licks that use all of those, something like this. This one also used all the pairs of tritones. Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah, I would even think of that more as being like a chromatic thing. I wouldn't even have thought of it as being tritones.
Yeah. Tritones are also used in country music. Here's a pedal steel guitar bend using the tritone. On the top of page 3 we have another country example. Here I'm going to use a banjo roll, and I have high notes that stay the same that add some smoothness between the tritones. You can always add a note to a tritone, and it kind of mitigates the tension in the tritone. So here's a banjo roll ending with some descending tritones.
Was that clean enough for you?
No. You heard it. I should let you do it.
I'll try. I'd like to give it a shot just for fun. So it'd be like, no!
It's tricky, isn't it? Take 37. No, it's just like, okay, it's not really take 37. This is the one.
I know. Sorry, it was just too funny. You sounded so defeated. I'm sorry if I ruined the good one.
Okay, well, let's go on to jazz.
I haven't laughed that hard in a long time. I appreciate that.
The tritone is used a lot in jazz as well. This is where it gets even more complicated. Theoretically, we said the tritone is the heart of the 7th chord, and if you take a 7th chord and back cycle around the circle of fifths, the tritone actually descends on the neck by half steps like this: B7, E7, A7, D7, G7. And that tritone is also, if you flip it, it becomes the tritone not only of the B7 but of the F7, and so you can actually do it on the other side of the circle as well, doing the same thing with different roots. If you want to create a cool bass line, you can use a tritone bass and do things like this. I went from B7 all the way around to F7, or you can do a walking bass. That. When you're playing all that stuff, you don't want to be playing big, full chords. And so the tritone kind of implies that chord, and it leaves us free to do these other things. That's why we use the tritone instead of these big, full chords. There's also something known as the tritone substitution, where you literally take out one chord and substitute a chord which is a tritone away from it, which would be a flatted 5th or an augmented 4th, directly opposite on the circle. So in a 2-5-1 turnaround, say D minor 7, G7, C major 7. For the G7, we take out the G7 and put a D flat 7 instead, so it sounds like this. Very similar sound. And that's, again, a more advanced jazz concept. There's some chords that contain multiple tritones. The G7 flat 5 inverts at 6 frets rather, because it contains 2 tritones. Here's another example. Those are the exact same chord. That's also a G7 flat 5, or they both are D flat 7 flat 5s. The diminished 7th also contains 2 tritones, but they're equidistant from each other, so this inverts at 3 frets each. The tritone scale contains 2 triads that are a tritone apart, like a G major and a D flat major, and it would sound something like this. The tritone is also a defining characteristic of the Locrian mode, which is often played over a minor 7 flat 5 chord, like B minor 7 flat 5, in the Locrian mode. Well, that's all for this lesson. We hope you've enjoyed it.